Alright, it's been a little over a week since Splatoon 2 came out, and one weapon that I was expecting to play a lot, and a lot of people are expecting me to play a lot, was of course the Octobrush. As someone that put in a lot of time into this weapon in the first game, it was an obvious choice for me to put time into this in the second game. And coming into it, I had already been aware of some of the changes the weapon had received, thanks to some info provided to me from that SRB2 dude, as he got a copy of the game early and was willing to provide some information regarding the weapon to me. So I appreciate him providing the information prior to release. It was allowing me to provide said information to other people that played this weapon, but it also allowed me to go into this knowing the kind of changes it got, and allowed me to prepare for what I should use with it. So today I'm going to be talking about the changes the Octobrush received, things that you might not have noticed, or maybe you just haven't even tried it yourself, or if you don't have the game yet and you're wanting to play this weapon, well, now you'll know the changes it received. Currently I'm sitting here at the gear screen. You can see the equipment I'm using. This is not exactly my final idea of what I'm going for, but this gives you a general glimpse at what's going to be happening here. I'm using at least two mains of swim speed, main of sub saver, and then some ink recovery and some ink saver main. And I'll get into why I'm using some ink saver stuff in a bit. So first off, I want to go into the training area and show you some of the changes that this weapon got. So the first thing that dude told me was that its base damage had been adjusted. If you had watched some of my previous videos on the Octobrush, I did mention some changes I'd like to see for this weapon when the game came out. And thankfully, it seems like Nintendo listened to just about everything. The Octobrush has received several buffs, and not only the weapon, but its kit has received several buffs. So first off, we'll go over something simple, and it's base damage. In the first game, its base damage was 37 per hit. That is why a lot of people, especially myself, would recommend damage up on it in the first game, allowing you to raise its base damage to make three-shotting enemies more consistent. Now, its base damage is 40. They raised it by 3 points, which was the rough equivalent of running one main of damage up in the first game. But it wasn't just the base damage that was fixed. Now, its fall-off damage and flick damage from the outer range has also been buffed. So its outer range damage is still more consistent than it was in the first game. Once again, that's why we use damage up, to make the fall-off damage and the damage from the flick itself make it more consistent and able to basically secure kills faster than it could without any damage up. This was increased to around the 29 to 35 range, which was about the range that we would get with damage up in the first game. Now, another change the weapon received is regarding its range and spread. Now, I can't really provide some easy comparison shots because I don't have my Wii U plugged in anymore, and I don't even have access to it anymore. But you can take it from me that this has been improved. As you can see, it has gone past 2.5 lines. If I could remember correctly, in the first game it would go about maybe a line and a half. I think maybe at the 2-line mark. And then its spread has also been increased. Now it goes much farther to the left and to the right of where you're flicking. This allows you to cover your bases a lot faster, and you can provide yourself with more turf to move in. Just from flicking, you can now decide which direction you want to move in, and is much better than in the first game, where it was more concentrated towards the middle of the brush. Now it actually does what it looks like it should be doing, and providing coverage to the far ends of the brush as it flicks. Now, that's basically about the base weapon changes it got. Its damage has been buffed, its range had been buffed, its coverage had been buffed. But now let's talk about the kit itself. If you had seen my video talking about the Octobrush in this game, or if you had read a thing I made a while back, I mentioned that its kit was kind of lacking. And that's because, provided with information from the people that played the Octobrush at the E3 tournament, I had been told of several things. One, that the auto bombs were not good. And two, the Inkjet's coverage was very lacking. This didn't really make me feel good regarding the weapon because it had both of these, but thankfully Nintendo has listened and has corrected some of the things about both of these things. So first off, the Autobomb's detect range has been increased significantly. I have no sub power up, and yet you can see the range that it covers. Giving this sub power up actually doesn't increase the range. Apparently it was going to, but now it gives it bomb range. So now it's able to detect things from a further length. Another change is it will actively seek people out. The Autobomb will chase people for a long period of time, and though I'll have to probably cut to a clip of this happening, because you can't really quite see it that well here, but it is in fact a thing. It will chase people around for quite some time, and there's another change about it. In both my article where I talked about the weapon and a video where I talked about it, I mentioned the biggest disappointment to the Autobomb was its lacking an ability to detect people in their ink. If someone was just sitting in their ink hiding and sharking, which is what's referred to as sitting there waiting, the Autobomb would not detect anyone and would just explode. I mentioned how the Autobomb detecting would not only help the Octobrush so much, but it would help just about any weapon that's given the Autobomb. And it seems like that was listened to. As the Autobomb was adjusted, so now if people are hiding in their ink, it can detect them, and it will chase them. And that is a big change that was very needed for this sub-weapon to even really be that good. Now it can be used to point out people that are sitting in their ink waiting for you, or it can just be there to assist your teammates. If you don't want to push forward and your team is, you can just throw an Autobomb, and that way your teammates will know if there's anyone in that immediate area. Even if they're around walls or anything, as long as they're in this detect radius, the Autobomb will chase after them. Even if they're on a different level from the bomb itself. If they're on a cliff above the bomb will run into the wall to show you that there is someone above it. And that is, personally, I think that's really cool, because that shows pretty much anyone that's trying to hide and get the upper hand on you. Now, the second thing is the Inkjet. Now, the Inkjet is a pretty good special. It basically works like a blaster, and in the original Inkjet didn't cover that well when it would shoot, making it very hard to kill people based off indirect shots from it, making it so you had to direct. And they improved its coverage slightly. So now its bursts actually cover a decent amount of the map rather than small little chunks. And the indirect damage is still a base 30 damage. However, with the coverage, it makes it easier to get follow-up shots. Hitting the ground covers it in a decent enough spread to where the enemy can't easily just backpedal away from you, making it easier to chase people down with the Inkjet if you can't actually land directs, which surprisingly is very hard to do. It seems like the hitbox for the direct is not very big, but with this change to the indirect, it makes it easier to handle. So now I want to actually talk about why I'm using some Inksaber main and Inksaber sub. So Autobombs take a base 70% of your ink, which is a pretty decent chunk of ink for something that's, I guess, very basic. Running a main of Inksaber sub brings it down to 60%, so it's a bit more manageable. And the reason why I'm using Inksaber main on top of that is because the Octobrush technically did receive one nerf, and that's its ink consumption. This is most notable when rolling around, but the ink consumption of the Octobrush has been changed. I'm running some Inksaber main, and you can see how fast my tank is depleting now. And this is probably the only nerf I've noticed. Its ink consumption has been increased ever slightly, probably because of the range and spread buff that it received. They figured that its ink consumption should be adjusted accordingly to account for this. But it's kind of noticeable for flicking, but it is most notable when rolling around, as you can very plainly see the ink tank depleting very, very fast. So I've been using some Inksaber sub, some Inksaber main, and ink recovery. The Inksaber sub and ink recovery basically is more so I can pump out Autobombs to assist teammates and to pressure people. Regardless if the Autobomb is actually capable of killing someone is irrelevant. across the last week, people have been telling me that they found ways to counter quote-unquote auto bombs by basically running into it, causing it to explode without chasing them. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for this thing to kill you. I'm looking for this thing to tell me where you're at. I want to know where you're hiding. I don't care if it kills you or not. The killing is just the icing on the cake. So I was more so worried about this thing's ability to find people rather than actually killing them. And regardless if people found a way to make it explode early is irrelevant to me, because that just shows me that they are nearby and gives me the advantage. So overall, the weapon has received very many buffs and not really that big of a nerf. Now it pretty much, alongside the changes the other rollers have received, the Octobrush is actually a better choice. Now this is going to seem very biased, and it kind of is, but a lot of the other rollers have received so many nerfs. Even in this game, they've received a lot of nerfs. See, now the Splat Roller's range is about the range of the Octobrush. And though the roller, some people are going to say that it is a one-shot to kill, it's actually very hard to get that one-shot hitbox anymore. They've changed the Splat Rollers and Dynamo and everything so much that now it just seems very difficult to play these weapons very effectively like you used to in the first game. And those changes have made the Octobrush seem like a better option. And in all honesty, that's a good thing. I'm not the kind of person that was mad about how easy it was to play the crack on in the first game or whatever, but it was criminal, at least in my eyes, it was criminal how people would just ignore the Octobrush because it wasn't a quick kill. But now, compared to the new Dynamo, which now is sadly not that effective at all despite the weapon's design, this thing once again has received changes that make it, again, not really that good. And as someone has pointed out on Twitter a few days ago, the effective kill range of the Dynamo now is equal to the range of the tri-slosher. And the tri-slosher's kit right now is probably the most disgusting thing about the weapon. Its kit is very, very good. It has Burst Bomb and Ink Armor. And Ink Armor is currently probably the best special in the game, as it provides you the ability to tank one shot, in theory. Though I'm not going to really talk about it here, I'm just going to say that Ink Armor is the best special, and the fact is that the effective range of the Dynamo is now tied with the tri-slosher's base range. So where the Dynamo has to flick and get the flick off to kill someone, the tri-slosher can slosh twice before the Dynamo is done flicking, and they would have to fight at the same range to kill each other. So it seems like Nintendo is dragging the rollers down and, trying to bring the brushes up. The Inkbrush has also received some changes. I'm going to mention that now because people are going to ask about it. The Inkbrush, again, has received some slight changes. Its base damage was increased as well. Now it does 30 instead of 27. So it makes it, again, a little bit easier to kill. This was about the equivalent of running a main of damage again. And then its fall-off damage, or damage done from the flick outside of close quarters, was also increased by a few points. So it's still capable of killing faster than it could in the first game. However, because of the Octobrush's buffs in general, I still believe the Octobrush is a better choice. Even though this Inkbrush's kit is considered okay, the splashdown is pretty decent, but the lack of a good close quarters bomb like a burst bomb or a curling bomb kind of hurts the weapon. So if it had something like a better bomb, maybe this would have been better. I mentioned it to some people that Burst Bomb probably would have made this really good and made it an actual good choice over Octobrush. However, the fact that it has Splat Bomb again just makes it seem kind of mediocre in comparison when you figure now that the Auto Bomb has been buffed to essentially cover the shortcomings that it had before. So yeah, and then that's actually not all. Another change that it received was in regards to a mode. Now, for those that might not have known, in the first game, the Octobrush in tower control would suffer significantly. Through design of the tower in tower control, if you were to flick on the tower, the pole that stood upon the tower would push the Octobrush off. It was a big problem for Octobrushes and brushes in general. This did come up for splat rollers and all that of that sort as well. However, it hit the Octobrush more because at least the splat rollers can roll around on tower. The Octobrush cannot kill by squishing. Now, if you flick while on the tower, the pole no longer pushes you off. And flicking on the tower still covers stuff. You can still provide coverage by flicking on the tower. This allows you to still fight people that are on the tower. Another thing is, from a distance, if you were flicking up at the tower, the pole would just stop all damage. It would basically just tank all the damage that you're trying to put onto the tower. It no longer does this. Now you can flick onto the tower and actually damage people that are upon it. These changes were basically essential to this weapon being able to be played seriously in tower control. Now the weapon is actually capable of defending itself on the tower and able to get on the tower and fight people. And another good thing alongside this, and not so much the weapon itself, but the sub-weapon, auto bombs when thrown on the tower will stay on the tower. If an enemy is on the tower with an auto bomb, it'll chase them around the tower. So it'll just circle around the tower until it decides to explode. It'll just follow them around the tower, which is a pretty good thing. If they jump off the tower, it actually doesn't chase them. It'll stay on the tower. So that's a really interesting change as well. But overall, the Octobrush has been buffed enough to make this a more serious decision when it comes to playing this over the splat rollers. I'm a huge fan of this. I appreciate that, though it might not have been me exactly that Nintendo listened to, they've listened to some of the feedback regarding the weapons that needed to be changed. And that's not just Octobrush. Other weapons in the game that relied on certain abilities to make them, I guess, good, have been changed as well to account for the lack of damage up and defense up. Weapons like the Rapid Blaster have been adjusted so their damage is higher, and the Octobrush and Inkbrush are examples of that as well. And I can't say that I'm happy enough about this. This is just a bunch of good changes to the weapon and makes it a very good choice. The weapon, in regards to certain things like beacons and the Rainmaker shield, are still very good. The addition of Object Shredder in this game was to make it so certain weapons could deal more damage to the Rainmaker shield and so on and so forth. However, the Octobrush does just fine without the ability. The Octobrush can still squish beacons by rolling them over instantly, so you don't have to use Object Shredder to deal more damage to them. The Octobrush is still good at popping the Rainmaker shield, probably still one of the best weapons for popping it, so it doesn't need Object Shredder for that. And then another thing was Object Shredder on weapons for Ink Armor. Because though Ink Armor technically says it is for one shot, no matter how powerful, it actually does have health. However, because of the buff to the damage of the Octobrush, the health that the Ink Armor has is irrelevant to it. One flick from the Octobrush, even if it's not a point-blank flick, will break Ink Armor, allowing this to basically dunk on any weapon that is currently in Ink Armor, as long as you're able to just continue to output damage to it. So, regardless of the Object Shredder, this weapon is just still good in just about every regard that it was before. It can break beacons, it can deal with the Rainmaker essentially by itself, and now the new addition, which is becoming very apparent in team comps with Ink Armor, this weapon just dunks on it. It's so good. I'm so happy to see the changes that Nintendo gave this weapon, and I just couldn't appreciate this more. Now, when it comes to some of the variants the weapon has, I'm actually aware of what the Octobrush Nouveau will have, as a friend of mine has provided me the information from the game's data, so I'm aware of what the Octobrush Nouveau will have, and I'm not gonna, for those that don't want to know it, I'm not gonna say it, but I'm just going to say that I am a fan of it as well. So I'm excited to play this weapon, and the one thing that excites me the most is other people in the community have noticed how strong the weapon is now in comparison to other rollers, and that alone has made me really excited that people are now giving this a shot because of the changes the other rollers have received. Well, though I don't agree with people saying that the Octobrush is good now, I am just happy to see that people are actually playing it. So I'm going to end it off now. It's been like a 20-minute video, but I really wanted to get all this information out there for people that are curious. The Octobrush has been buffed a lot in comparison to the rollers, which have been continuously nerfed into the ground. And I feel bad for those that use the splat rollers, but as someone that's been having to fight the fight since the first game, to have Octobrush be seen as on par with the splat rollers, I don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy and say, like, I'm glad that Octobrush is now being seen as superior to it. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all later.